In my last video on platforms, we briefly discussed edges and the different types there are. Rather than squashing my obsession with platforms, it did the opposite and was more like adding fuel to a fire. Since then, I've discovered many more. Something else I discovered hidden away at a toy fair was a box of second-hand Pico platforms, a product that I've always wanted to do something with. A deal was done as I had a project in mind that they'd suit well, which I'm now sharing with you. Before construction could start, a fair amount of deconstruction had to take place. Mostly soaking in warm soapy water, trying to scrape off the sticky brick paper. When new, this is really glossy and quite difficult to weather and make look realistic. Like the Hornby modular platforms, these are designed more for the set track system of model railways. I like them though, as they offer a different edge and a textured platform surface. And as we'll see, they're easy to make look less toy-like and more model railway-like in appearance. Construction of this Pico platform kit is relatively straightforward, sides and top surface. The parts clip together and the fit is very good. In theory, don't need gluing up. I think it's probably best to glue them though, as gaps do appear over time. Strengthening the structure on a hole is a good idea too. I've done it with some styrene strips cut from a sheet to the appropriate dimensions, cross members and where the platform surface pieces join. I'll leave them as they are in their modular form until I'm ready to install them on the layout. Like the Hornby version, the ramp section has a curved tapered edge that for my requirements needs to be straightened out. You could do what I'm doing here with the Hornby platforms, as they are more readily available second hand. It would be easier though to modify a plain straight section for the ramp part. It is possible to straighten the Pico ramp section by firstly disassembling the parts, discarding the top surface and gently teasing the side parts straight. This isn't difficult and it doesn't take much time. Then cut a piece of styrene sheet to the desired width and to the length of the ramp sides we've just straightened. Once the side pieces are glued on, we can add more strengthening struts. We can also make a piece to join the top surfaces as we did for the normal straight pieces. That's just a styrene strip, scored and slightly bent. So long as the two pieces don't come apart, it should keep its structural integrity, especially when glued up. And as talking of glue, I'll be using my normal liquid poly, which is Plastic Weld by EMA. It's slightly aggressive formula working in our favour on this project. With the track work already laid, I marked out roughly where the platform needed to go, trimmed off the cork underlay and glued down a thin piece of styrene sheet, making sure to gauge out the platform height against the top of the rails, which should be 12mm for 00 gauge. I err on the side of so long as it's within 1mm either way, it should be okay. Anything more or less than 1mm will start to look wrong. Using my homemade gauges that I made in the first platform video, I positioned the platform sections and glued them down. Gaps between the sections are inevitable, but using the strengthening pieces underneath makes it a lot easier to fill them in. The putty that I've used to fill them in looks really awful at this stage, but once it's been sanded down with some coarse grit paper and blended in with some dark tone paints, it doesn't look that bad. I mean, even if it does, just go and look at the road surface outside, see how many gaps and things that have been filled in and how awful it looks. It's not that it looks wrong, it's just not uniform. For the brickwork, I used super quick red brick paper. For whatever reason, I thought it would look okay, but for reasons that will become apparent in the next video, it needed to be yellow brick paper. I did change it, but didn't film it. Chopped up into 14mm strips, and with the aid of some gummy glue spread evenly, we can now stick the paper onto our platforms. Now I've used Yoo-Hoo for this, but there are other gummy type glues out there, Gorilla and Unibond, either of those will be ideal for this. Where the strips overlap, it's always a good idea to line up the brickwork as much as possible, just because it looks better. And it's a lot easier to camouflage that joint as well in a moment when we do some weathering. I seem to have skipped over the painting process, which was really quite simple. It was a black undercoat all over, and then grey on the edge coping stones, and then various shades of black and dark grey sprayed in a blotchy, uneven pattern over all of the top surface. And as if by magic, I managed to change the brick colour from red to yellow. Again, it will become apparent why in the next video. For the white line, I wanted a really worn appearance instead of a complete white block on the edge. So I got some really old white paint and then offloaded the brush onto some tissue paper. It's not quite dry brushing, but very close to it. And then gently drag the brush off the edge of the platform to give that effect. Now this is one of the jobs that I saw being done once, and it blows all of your preconceptions about who does it and when out of the water. Well, it did back in the 80s anyway, when I saw it being done by some of my friends that were on youth opportunity schemes, or was it YTS, and they worked on the platform and they were made to do this on a weekend. They made such a bad job of it on purpose, just so that they wouldn't have to do it again. It's probably done by professional painters these days, which is why I thought a nice little touch in honour of my friends on YTS. I'd do some nice paint splatters down the front of the platform edge, which is quite a common feature, especially in odd, older locations. It looked a bit awful, so I decided to thin it down a little bit and blend it in. Made it a lot better. It's one of those effects that really stands out when viewed from a distance and not close up. I quite enjoyed doing this. It makes a change from the wagons. So it's also cost me next to nothing, which goes right in grain with my skinflint ideas. Next time I'll be trying to fill the gap on the platform with an equally cheap station building, less than a tenner. Until then, thanks for watching. See you next time.